Looking back at your preliminary task, the school magazine, what do you feel you've learned in the progression from it to the full product? Well, I feel I've learned a lot from creating my prelim task to creating my music magazine. This is my preliminary task front page. This is my music magazine front page. Then my prelim contents and my music magazine contents. I feel I've learnt a lot from starting my school magazine. Despite creating the same product, it still has different concepts of like school and magazine, school and music. I still feel that my level of skill and knowledge has improved drastically. When I first started my school magazine, I had no idea how to use Photoshop, let alone create a magazine. Therefore, I spent a lot of time getting to know how to use the software with all the different tools I could use, which this in hindsight took up a lot of my creating time. Therefore, I automatically knew that my music magazine task was going to be better due to not just having a better knowledge but being able to spend more time focusing on the quality of my product. My time management was a lot better in my music magazine task, as I feel I learnt how long things were going to take from my prelim task. Therefore, I was able to allocate myself enough time for each concept of my magazine like the second time round. I feel I stuck to most of all my deadlines, if not all of them. I finished my magazine with plenty of time to spare, enabling me to focus more time on my evaluation questions. This was helpful as it meant I could focus on like the quality and detail of the magazine as well, such as when I was doing my contents page, I could enable that like all of the page numbers were lined up and things like that. I could also make sure that all of my texts were the same, like shades and same colours and things like that, so that I could enable the house style was still kept. As you can see, in my prelim task, it was very simple. The texts were all basic fonts. Nothing was very exciting. It lacked variety. Starting with my image, I'm actually very pleased with how my image turned out in both magazines. I feel they both have really good composition of being centred, allow me to enter text around each side of the image. I also believe that the lighting in both pictures is very sufficient for the image and is a perfect balance with the magazine. Although taking me a time to grasp the concept of Photoshop, I believe that in the end, I produced a brilliant manipulation in both tasks. You can tell that in my prelim task, I've clearly had less knowledge of the program, but I still feel I produced a high quality image. My model has no blemishes, and her liquefying is practically unnoticeable. However, you can tell my skills have developed, as in my final magazine image, you can tell that I've manipulated the image a lot more, such as adding shadows around the face and things like this. Still, there is no blemishes and like her liquefying is practically unnoticeable, but obviously like my skills have just developed a lot more. I feel that I also decided both my photos, I was going to use a serious posture. Sorry, not in both my photos. I also decided that in my music magazine I was going to create more of a serious posture, was a better idea, making my magazine look a lot more professional and lifelike. Another vital aspect was my layout. I feel even though I used the same concept for my layout through both tasks, I still improved drastically from my prelim task to my final product. I used the same layout of the model in the centre of the page with text around the outsides. However, certain aspects I kept from my prelim tasks, such as using the left and right orientation of my text, making sure that all of my text was in line with the outside of the page. This ensured that my magazine looked professional and slick. However, I did learn that from my prelim task, all of the text and info I added was placed around the top of the page. Therefore, it made the page look very top-heavy. Therefore, when doing my final product, I made sure that it was balanced along both sides, so it wasn't too top-heavy or bottom-heavy. I learnt that from my school magazine. Obviously, the school magazine was a lot more formal than my music one. Therefore, I had less headlines throughout, just because I feel like with a music magazine, people want to know more before opening it. Yet I still feel that my layout needed to be planned more from my prelim task, as I don't think I thought through it enough before actually designing it. For the composition of my image, I decided against using props in my music magazine task. I did it in my prelim task as I thought it suited the topic. Having a folder really brought in the reader, people could connect with it. However, in the music magazine one, I feel that sometimes it can be distracting and draw the main attention away from the model. I felt that using a serious posture with a straight looking mid shot to ensure that there was enough detail involved from both the outfit and the environment, and also the facial expression. I also learnt that the fonts I used were completely different. In my prelim task, I used very basic sans fonts, very basic serif fonts. They are all very formal and boring, and nothing exciting hooks the reader in. However, I do feel that it was relevant to the theme as it was a school magazine. Therefore, in my music magazine task, I had a lot more freedom, and the magazine was a lot more informal, allowing me to use a wider selection of fonts and pick in something that really suited my genre. Therefore, I took a lot of time picking the correct and most appropriate font, but I went for a slick, modern font, hoping that this would attract the readers the most. Looking back at my contents, they both have the same content. Looking back at my contents page, they both have some concept that are similar, yet some that are very different. I've learnt that one of the most vital things was to ensure that I had 3 columns on the page. This was, as you can probably notice, I also drastically dropped the amount of images from that contents page to this one. I dropped it from 5 in my prelim task to only 3 in my music magazine task. At the time, I felt it was best as I wanted to give the readers a lot of knowledge about what was in the magazine, give them as much detail as possible. However, when creating my music magazine one, I felt that I wanted to keep people in a sense of surprise, and by having it like this meant that the user was more likely to buy the product to find out more on what was inside the magazine, not just on the contents. There's nothing worse than already knowing all the stories before you've even read the magazine. It feels like a waste of money and a waste of time. Therefore, I kept it to 3 to keep that sense of surprise. I also noticed that Mixmag similarly use 1 or 2 images as well on their contents page, which is a great help considering it was very similar to the image and genre of my music magazine that I was trying to achieve. One thing I learnt about fonts was that in my preliminary task, I did not keep a fluent look through my fonts and things from my front page to my contents page. I've used completely different fonts here to I have here on my contents page. I feel that therefore I didn't enhance my house style throughout the magazine, and some people might say it's hard to connect the 2 pages and say they're from the same magazine if they were split up. Therefore, in my music magazine, I decided to use the same font as I did for the main titles and kept this going throughout my magazine. Therefore, I feel like I created a stronger house style, and people could tell the magazine was similar rather than completely different. I decided against using all different fonts for my 2 pages. I didn't want my magazine to look edgy, so I tried to keep similar fonts throughout the page. I wasn't going for this edgy look, as that's not really what my target audience wanted. They want more of a sleek, modern, contemporary styles. Therefore, I decided that keeping the theme and the type of fonts the same was the best idea. Overall, I feel like I've learnt a lot from creating my prelim task, as I feel that I've learnt that creating my music magazine was going to be a lot harder than my actual preliminary task. Therefore, there was a lot more finer details and things involved, and a lot more planning and research that was essential to completing before I started designing my music magazine. I had to ensure that all my images were perfect and blemish-free, because I wanted they needed to look professional and therefore needed to have a high quality finish. My prelim task really helped me with the progression of my music magazine, as I feel I really achieved the goal of making it look like a real professional magazine that you could notice in the industry one day. I feel that even though they are quite similar in concepts and things, I obviously really liked this from when I was creating my prelim task, and I feel like it's really helped me when actually doing my music task. I feel that I've really achieved exactly what my target audience want and what I was aiming for at the start. Therefore, I'm very proud of how both my magazines turned out.